Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Yes, all my fellow war lovers and medieval mystery fans, hit the bell icon to be notified every upload. Thank you and enjoy. In the late 1930s, the USS President Garfield set sail for China. Among its passengers, a middle-aged American gazed out to sea. His passport identified him as a farmer, but his mission lay not on land, but in the skies. He was tasked with evaluating the state of China's Air Force. What was intended as a 3-month assignment evolved into an 8-year odyssey through warfare. By its conclusion, he had risen to the rank of Major General, and the unit he established, the Flying Tigers, had cemented its place as one of the most renowned squadrons in aerial warfare history. Claire Lee Chennault was born on September 6, 1893, in Commerce, Texas. His rugged features mirrored his character, bold, unyielding, and adventurous. However, Chennault's abrasive personality and disregard for military protocol often made him a thorn in his superiors' sides. Crucially, they failed to recognize his brilliance as a tactician, a recognition that would come later. Chennault's passion for aviation ignited during his college years. Hailing from farming stock, he initially studied agriculture, but his aspirations soared skyward. He served as ground crew during World War I and after the war entered a fighter pilot training program. His progression was swift, and by 1923, he commanded the 19th Pursuit Squadron based in Hawaii. The era was not favorable for fighter pilots. Military theorists of the time championed bombers as the future of aerial warfare, believing that fleets of heavily armed bombers could outpace defensive fighters and that fast, large bombers would always penetrate defenses. Strategists argued that pursuit planes, now known as fighters, had no future in combat, asserting that bombers were the ultimate war-winning machines. Chennault, however, was a fervent and stubborn advocate for fighters. His radical views earned him enemies within the high command, setting the stage for future challenges. While stationed in Hawaii, Chennault began developing innovative air battle theories and tactics. He concluded that formations of fighters were more effective than individual planes. Beyond training fighter pilots, he pursued his passion for aerobatics, organizing and flying with a team called 3 Men on the Flying Trapeze. In 1936, this team performed in Miami, capturing the attention of Mang Chu, vice principal of China's Central Aviation School, who was in the audience. Impressed, Mang Chu invited Chennault to train pilots in China. Initially, Chennault declined. It took a personal letter from an unexpected source to change his mind. At a low point in his career, his aerial warfare theories rejected by superiors who urged him to retire due to health issues, Chennault received an invitation from Madame Chiang Kai-shek, the wife of China's leader. The Chinese government offered him the rank of colonel in their Air Force, a salary of $1,000 per month plus generous allowances, and most attractively, the right to fly any airplane in the Chinese Air Force at 4 times his previous salary. The grounded 44-year-old Chennault found the offer irresistible and embarked on the most significant journey of his career. Like many American military officers, Chennault believed that war between the United States and Japan was inevitable. Before such a conflict erupted, he sought to understand the potential enemy firsthand. Alongside his aerobatic teammate Bill McDonald, Chennault undertook a month-long tour of Japan, covertly photographing potential military targets with cameras hidden under their coats. He realized that while his intelligence was incomplete, it surpassed existing U.S. Army and Navy documents. Chennault arrived in Shanghai in June 1937, where he met Madame Chiang Kai-shek, who served as the Secretary General of China's Aviation Committee. Despite their contrasting backgrounds, the blunt Texan pilot and China's elegant First Lady, they found common ground. Chennault was captivated by her elegance, dedication to building an effective air force, and her beguiling Southern-accented English, a result of her education in Virginia. After their first meeting, the enchanted Texan proclaimed that he would never find inner peace, and that thereafter she would be his princess. Madame Chiang and Chennault were kindred spirits, both staunch believers in the crucial role of air power. Chennault began his inspection tour from Nanning, visiting Air Force bases and aviation schools across the country. What he observed was disheartening. He discovered the extent of corruption and inefficiency plaguing China's Air Force. Over a decade of factionalism, corruption, and nepotism had taken their toll. While officials claimed there were 500 aircraft, Chennault's inspection revealed only 90 operational planes, a stark contrast to Japan's 3,000 aircraft, 400 of which were based in Shanghai alone. Chennault concluded that inadequate training and obsolete aircraft rendered Chinese pilots ill-prepared for battle. The timing couldn't have been worse. On July 7, 1937, before Chennault had even completed his report, gunfire at the Marco Polo Bridge near Beijing ignited a conflict that would engulf China for 8 grueling years. 10 days later, Chiang Kai-shek addressed Chinese and foreign journalists, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's struggle. Chennault's journey from a sidelined advocate of fighter aviation to the leader of the legendary Flying Tigers exemplifies the impact of vision and tenacity in the face of adversity. His legacy endures, a testament to the power of air superiority and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to challenge conventional wisdom. In the summer of 1937, as tensions between China and Japan escalated, Claire Lee Chennault was conducting an inspection tour of China's air defenses. Upon the outbreak of full-scale war on July 7, 1937, he immediately offered his services to China, marking the beginning of an 8-year tenure that would solidify his legacy as a pivotal figure in aerial warfare. Chennault's initial task was to assess the readiness of the Chinese Air Force. His findings were stark. Widespread corruption and inefficiency had left China with far fewer operational aircraft than officially reported. Despite these challenges, Chennault's candid assessments earned him the trust of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, who valued his honesty and practical approach. On August 13, 1937, Japan launched a full-scale assault on Shanghai, employing bombers to devastating effect. Chennault, however, had a strategy to counter this aerial threat. Recognizing that China's outdated fighters couldn't match the speed of Japanese bombers, he proposed preemptive tactics, positioning defending fighters in the air before enemy bombers arrived. He also assisted in developing an early warning network dubbed Bamboo Radar to detect incoming attacks. The results were immediate. In subsequent raids, Chinese pilots employing Chennault's tactics shot down numerous Japanese aircraft. Notably, on August 14th, the 4th Group of the Chinese Air Force downed 6 bombers without any losses, a day later commemorated as China's Air Force Day. Pilots like Louis Yim-kun excelled under Chennault's guidance, with Louis personally credited for multiple enemy kills in the early days of combat. Chennault's contributions did not go unnoticed. Madame Chiang Kai-shek, recognizing his value, gifted him a Curtiss P-36 Hawk fighter, which he used for reconnaissance missions and reportedly combat engagements against Japanese forces. However, as a non-combatant advisor, any direct combat involvement remained unofficial. The Japanese, aware of Chennault's impact, placed a bounty on his head, underscoring the threat he posed to their operations. Despite diplomatic pressures and official U.S. neutrality laws discouraging American involvement, Chennault remained steadfast in his commitment to China's defense. While some American trainers withdrew, he chose to stay, driven by a determination to see Japan expelled from China. In response to China's improved aerial defenses, Japan introduced advanced aircraft, including the Mitsubishi Type 96 bombers and Nakajima Type 97 fighters. These newer models outclassed China's existing fleet, leading to significant losses for Chinese pilots. The Japanese quickly gained air superiority over key regions, including Nanjing and Shanghai. The situation grew dire as Chinese cities faced relentless bombings, resulting in substantial casualties and infrastructural damage. Amidst these challenges, Madame Chiang Kai-shek made impassioned appeals to the international community, seeking aid for China's defense. However, global powers, adhering to neutrality policies, were hesitant to provide direct military assistance. This lack of external support further strained China's already limited resources, making the struggle against Japanese forces increasingly arduous. By late 1937, the Chinese Air Force's capabilities were severely diminished, with many aircraft lost and few replacements available. Despite these setbacks, Chennault's innovative tactics and unwavering resolve continued to inspire Chinese forces, laying the groundwork for future aerial strategies and the eventual formation of the renowned Flying Tigers. By late 1937, the Chinese Air Force was in a dire state, with its best pilots lost and only a dozen aircraft remaining. Amid this crisis, unexpected assistance arrived from the Soviet Union. Under the Sino-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact, the Soviets initiated Operation Zet, a covert mission to bolster China's defenses against Japanese aggression. This operation saw the deployment of the Soviet volunteer group, comprising over 3,600 pilots and ground crew at its peak. The Soviet Union supplied China with more than 1,200 aircraft between 1937 and 1941, including advanced fighters like the Polikarpov Thazt-15 and I-16, as well as bombers such as the Tupolev SB. These contributions were pivotal in sustaining China's aerial resistance. Soviet pilots operating under the guise of volunteers played a crucial role in defending key Chinese cities. Notably, during the defense of Wuhan, Soviet aviators collaborated with Chinese forces to counter Japanese air raids. Their involvement marked a significant shift in the air war over China, challenging Japan's previously uncontested aerial dominance. Chennault, serving as an advisor to the Chinese Air Force, recognized the tenacity and skill of the Soviet pilots. He collaborated with them to develop effective air defense strategies, including early warning systems and coordinated fighter tactics. This partnership yielded significant successes, disrupting Japanese bombing campaigns and providing a morale boost to Chinese forces. One notable engagement occurred on April 29, 1938, Emperor Hirohito's birthday. Anticipating a major Japanese air assault, Chennault proposed a deceptive strategy. Chinese and Soviet aircraft vacated visible airfields to create the illusion of vulnerability. When Japanese bombers, escorted by fighters, commenced their attack, they were ambushed by concealed Chinese and Soviet fighters. The ensuing battle resulted in the downing of 21 Japanese aircraft, marking one of Japan's most significant aerial defeats at that point in the war. The contributions of the Soviet volunteer group came at a high cost. Between 1937 and 1940, 236 Soviet airmen lost their lives in China. Their sacrifices are commemorated at numerous sites across China, including the Liberation Park Memorial in Wuhan, which houses the remains of 15 Soviet pilots. By 1940, the geopolitical landscape shifted as tensions escalated in Europe. Anticipating conflict with Germany, the Soviet Union began recalling its volunteers from China. This withdrawal left the Chinese Air Force in a precarious position, once again facing the formidable Japanese air power with diminished support. Recognizing the urgent need to rebuild China's air capabilities, Madame Chiang Kai-shek and Chennault collaborated to establish a new training program. They set up a fighter pilot school in Kunming, aiming to cultivate a new generation of Chinese aviators. Despite limited resources and time constraints, this initiative laid the groundwork for China's continued aerial resistance. Chennault also sought international support to bolster China's air defenses. In late 1939, he traveled to the United States, providing detailed reports on Japanese air capabilities to U.S. military officials. Despite initial reluctance from the U.S. government to become entangled in foreign conflicts, Chennault's efforts eventually paved the way for increased American support, culminating in the formation of the American Volunteer Group, famously known as the Flying Tigers. Through these combined efforts, China's Air Force persevered, adapting to the evolving challenges of the Second Sino-Japanese War. The legacy of international collaboration, exemplified by the sacrifices of the Soviet volunteers and the strategic vision of leaders like Chennault, played a pivotal role in sustaining China's resistance during this tumultuous period. In the late 1930s, Claire Lee Chennault, a former U.S. Army Air Corps officer, found himself at odds with American military leadership due to his unorthodox theories on aerial warfare. His proposals for innovative fighter tactics were met with skepticism, leading to his retirement in 1937. Seeking a platform to implement his ideas, Chennault accepted an invitation to serve as an aviation advisor to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek in China, which was embroiled in the Second Sino-Japanese War against Japan. By 1940, the situation in China had deteriorated significantly. The withdrawal of Soviet support left the Chinese Air Force severely weakened, and Japanese forces exploited this vulnerability, launching relentless bombing campaigns on major cities, including Chongqing, the wartime capital. During the first 6 months of these assaults, Japan dropped approximately 350,000 tons of bombs on Chongqing, devastating the city and inflicting massive civilian casualties. Amid this turmoil, Chennault remained in Chongqing, refusing to seek shelter during air raids. Instead, he meticulously observed Japanese aircraft and tactics, refining his theories on air combat. Recognizing the urgent need for modern aircraft and trained pilots, he sought assistance from the United States. However, his initial efforts were met with resistance. American military analysts doubted Japan's capability to produce advanced aircraft like the Mitsubishi A6M0, dismissing Chennault's intelligence reports detailing its performance. Additionally, his application for reinstatement into the U.S. Army Air Corps was declined. Despite these setbacks, global events began to shift in favor of Chennault's mission. By late 1940, with much of Europe under Nazi control and Britain and the Soviet Union struggling against Axis powers, President Franklin D. Roosevelt sought ways to support allies without direct military engagement, constrained by prevailing neutrality laws and public sentiment against entering foreign wars. In December 1940, Roosevelt announced a $100 million loan to China and emphasized the necessity of the United States becoming the arsenal of democracy, providing material support to nations resisting aggression. Capitalizing on this policy shift, Chennault collaborated with T.V. Soong, China's envoy in Washington, and General Mao Bangchu, commander of China's Air Force, to secure American fighter planes. Through the Lend-Lease program, the U.S. authorized the transfer of military equipment to China. Chennault played a pivotal role in recruiting American pilots and ground crew, forming the American Volunteer Group, AVG, later renowned as the Flying Tigers. This unit, composed of 3 squadrons, was equipped with Curtiss P-40 Warhawk fighters and trained in Chennault's innovative tactics, emphasizing energy conservation and hit-and-run attacks over traditional dogfighting. The AVG's impact was immediate and profound. Engaging Japanese forces in China and Burma, the Flying Tigers achieved a remarkable kill ratio, destroying numerous enemy aircraft while sustaining minimal losses. Their success not only boosted Chinese morale, but also validated Chennault's tactical theories, which had previously been dismissed by his peers. The AVG's effectiveness underscored the importance of air superiority and demonstrated the potential of well-executed fighter tactics against a numerically superior foe. Chennault's journey from a marginalized military theorist to the leader of one of World War II's most celebrated combat units exemplifies resilience and innovation. His unwavering commitment to his principles and his ability to adapt to evolving geopolitical landscapes were instrumental in altering the course of the air war in the China-Burma-India theater. The legacy of the Flying Tigers endures as a testament to the impact of visionary leadership and the strategic application of air power in modern warfare. In the early 1940s, prevailing Western stereotypes underestimated Japanese capabilities, often depicting them with derogatory imagery and doubting their proficiency in modern warfare. This pervasive underestimation led many Americans to believe that Japan lacked both the advanced aircraft and skilled pilots necessary for effective combat operations, a misconception that would later prove costly. In early 1941, Claire Lee Chennault, serving as an aviation advisor to the Chinese nationalist government, proposed the formation of an American volunteer air group to bolster China's defense against Japanese aggression. He asserted that with sufficient aircraft and trained pilots from the United States, air power alone could significantly challenge the Japanese forces. Chennault's ambitious vision sought the provision of 100 to 300 aircraft, aiming to leverage superior tactics and technology to counter Japan's advances. At that time, the United States maintained an official stance of neutrality as it had not yet entered World War II. Despite this, President Franklin D. Roosevelt recognized the strategic importance of supporting China and, in April 1941, authorized the creation of a clandestine special air unit. This initiative aimed to aid the nationalist government of China against Japan by organizing volunteer air units equipped with American aircraft and staffed by aviators and technicians recruited from the U.S. Army, Navy, and Marine Corps. The plan materialized with the allocation of 100 Curtiss P-40B Warhawk fighters, advanced aircraft that were among America's first modern fighters. These planes were shipped from New York Harbor in April 1941, destined for Rangoon, Burma, to be assembled and prepared for combat operations. However, during the loading process, one aircraft was accidentally lost, resulting in 99 P-40 arrivals in Burma. Recruiting skilled pilots and support personnel presented significant challenges. Chennault and Chinese officials faced resistance from U.S. military commanders, who were reluctant to release experienced personnel. The recruitment effort required direct intervention from President Roosevelt, who authorized U.S. servicemen to resign their commissions to join the endeavor. To maintain plausible deniability and adhere to neutrality laws, these volunteers were ostensibly employed by the Central Aircraft Manufacturing Company, CAMCO, a civilian entity with contracts that offered substantial financial incentives. Pilots were promised monthly salaries ranging from $600 to $750, significantly higher than their military pay, while ground crew received around $250 per month. The volunteers embarked on their journey to Asia under the guise of civilian occupations, with their true mission concealed. On July 10, 1941, the first group departed from San Francisco aboard the Dutch ship Jagersfontein, arriving in Rangoon, Burma on July 28th. Subsequent groups followed, with the second batch departing on September 24, 1941, aboard the Boschfontein, arriving on November 12th. Upon arrival, they commenced training on the P-40 aircraft, preparing for combat operations against Japanese forces. Chennault's strategic vision began to materialize as the American Volunteer Group, AVG, later famously known as the Flying Tigers, took shape. Comprising 3 squadrons, the AVG was tasked with defending the Burma Road and strategic locations in southwest China. The pilots were incentivized with a bounty system, receiving $500 for each confirmed Japanese aircraft shot down, further motivating their combat efforts. The AVG's deployment marked a significant shift in the air war over China. Their presence provided a much-needed boost to Chinese morale and demonstrated the effectiveness of well-coordinated air defense strategies. The Flying Tiger's distinctive shark-faced P-40s became emblematic of resistance against Japanese air superiority, and their successes laid the groundwork for increased U.S. support to China in the ensuing global conflict. In summary, the establishment of the American Volunteer Group represented a pivotal moment in World War II aviation history. Through innovative tactics, strategic foresight, and international collaboration, the AVG not only challenged Japanese air dominance, but also symbolized the growing resolve against Axis expansionism. In 1941, a diverse group of Americans embarked on a voyage across the Pacific under civilian guises: plantation owners, teachers, businessmen, and missionaries. Unbeknownst to many, these individuals were en route to become part of a distinguished military unit, the American Volunteer Group, AVG, later renowned as the Flying Tigers. Formation and arrival. Established under the leadership of Claire Lee Chennault, the AVG was composed of pilots and support staff from the U.S. Army Air Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps. Recruited under President Franklin D. Roosevelt's authority before the attack on Pearl Harbor, their mission was to bolster China's defense against Japanese forces. To circumvent neutrality laws, these volunteers were ostensibly employed by the Central Aircraft Manufacturing Company, CAMCO, a civilian entity. The volunteers departed from San Francisco in mid-1941, arriving in Rangoon, Burma, by late July. Burma, then a British colony, served as a strategic location for the AVG to commence operations, allowing them to train and prepare away from direct Japanese oversight. Training and conditions. Upon arrival, the AVG established a training base at a British airfield in Toungoo. Here, they underwent rigorous preparation to familiarize themselves with the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk aircraft. Despite the challenging living conditions characterized by intense heat, pervasive insects, and rudimentary accommodations, the volunteers remained committed. They often used 2 plates during meals to protect their food from pests and slept under mosquito nets, though these offered little defense against the rats that frequented their quarters. Chennault's leadership style was unconventional, yet effective. Dispensing with traditional military formalities, he fostered an environment that prioritized combat readiness over rigid discipline. Saluting was abolished, and attire was informal, reflecting the unit's unique status. This approach earned them mixed reputations. While some traditional military figures viewed them skeptically, their combat effectiveness soon spoke volumes. Tactical innovations. Central to the AVG's success were Chennault's innovative air combat tactics. Recognizing the limitations of the P-40s against the more maneuverable Japanese aircraft, he trained his pilots to exploit their planes' strengths: diving speed and firepower. The strategy emphasized boom and zoom tactics, diving attacks followed by rapid ascents to regain altitude, while avoiding traditional dogfighting scenarios where Japanese pilots had the advantage. Chennault also introduced a rigorous training regimen focused on these tactics, ensuring pilots were well prepared for the challenges ahead. Despite initial training accidents, a consequence of the accelerated program, the pilots' proficiency grew, leading to remarkable combat performance once engaged. Distinctive markings. One of the AVG's most iconic features was the shark-mouth nose art adorning their P-40s. This design choice was inspired by similar motifs seen on British Royal Air Force, RAF, No. 112 Squadron's aircraft in North Africa, which in turn had been influenced by German Luftwaffe designs. The intimidating artwork not only boosted morale, but also became a symbol of their fierce combat reputation. Combat engagements. The AVG was organized into 3 squadrons: the Adam and Eves, Panda Bears, and Hell's Angels. Each squadron operated in strategic locations to protect vital supply routes, notably the Burma Road, essential for transporting supplies to Chinese forces. Their first combat mission occurred on December 20, 1941, when they intercepted a formation of Japanese bombers en route to Kunming. Employing their training and tactics, the AVG pilots successfully shot down several enemy aircraft, marking a significant morale boost during a challenging phase of the war. And throughout their engagement, the Flying Tigers achieved an impressive combat record. Despite being outnumbered and operating under resource constraints, they were officially credited with destroying 297 enemy aircraft while losing only 14 pilots in combat. This success not only disrupted Japanese operations, but also provided a significant morale boost to Allied forces during a critical period. Legacy. The AVG's legacy extends beyond their combat achievements. Their innovative tactics, distinctive aircraft markings, and the daring spirit of their volunteer pilots have cemented their place in military history. The shark-mouth design they popularized continues to be a symbol of aerial prowess, influencing aircraft nose art in subsequent conflicts. The Flying Tigers exemplify how unconventional strategies and determined individuals can significantly impact broader military efforts. In late 1941, a group of American volunteers embarked on a covert mission to aid China against Japanese aggression. Disguised as civilians, plantation owners, teachers, businessmen, and missionaries, they journeyed to Burma, then a British colony, to form the American Volunteer Group, AVG, later renowned as the Flying Tigers. Led by Claire Lee Chennault, these volunteers aimed to protect supply routes between China and Burma and support Chinese forces fighting the Japanese. Upon arrival, the AVG established a base in Burma's interior. The conditions were challenging: intense heat, pervasive insects, and basic living accommodations. Meals required vigilance, with airmen using one plate for food and another as a cover to deter pests. Nights were spent under mosquito nets, though they offered little protection against the occasional rat falling from the ceiling. Chennault, valuing effectiveness over formality, abolished traditional military protocols like saluting. He focused on results, allowing his men the freedom to achieve objectives as they saw fit. This unconventional approach led some traditional military figures to view the AVG skeptically, labeling them as rogues. However, this apparent lack of discipline did not diminish their combat effectiveness. As civilians, not bound by standard military regulations, the AVG demonstrated exceptional courage and skill when engaged in battle. Central to the AVG's success were Chennault's innovative tactics and rigorous training. He prioritized combat readiness over ceremonial duties, immersing his airmen in strategies designed to counter Japanese aerial maneuvers. Chennault's doctrine deviated from conventional teachings. He instructed his pilots to avoid traditional dogfights, which favored the more maneuverable Japanese aircraft. Instead, they employed boom and zoom tactics, high-speed diving attacks followed by rapid ascents, capitalizing on the P-40's superior diving speed and firepower. The P-40 Warhawk's robust design included pilot armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and heavy armament, making it well-suited for Chennault's tactics. The AVG pilots exploited these strengths, diving at high speeds to engage enemy aircraft and then using their momentum to climb back to altitude, avoiding prolonged engagements where the nimble Japanese fighters had the advantage. The AVG's aircraft became iconic with the addition of shark-mouth nose art, inspired by similar designs on RAF No. 112 Squadron's P-40s in North Africa, which in turn were influenced by Luftwaffe Bf 110s of Zerstörer 76. The AVG adopted this fierce insignia to intimidate opponents and boost morale. By December 1941, after intensive training, the AVG was combat ready. The attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, propelled the United States into World War II, transforming the AVG's mission from a covert operation to an official combat role. On December 20, 1941, the AVG engaged in its first combat mission near Kunming, China, successfully intercepting a formation of Japanese bombers. This engagement marked the beginning of the Flying Tigers' legendary combat record, during which they were credited with shooting down 299 Japanese aircraft over approximately 6 months while losing only 12 planes in air battles. The AVG's success not only provided a significant morale boost to the Allied forces, but also disrupted Japanese air operations in the region. Their distinctive tactics and the iconic shark-mouth design of their P-40s left a lasting legacy in aerial warfare history. Sources upon returning from their mission, Chennault maintained a stoic demeanor during the debriefing. He acknowledged the pilots' achievements, but also highlighted areas needing improvement, urging them to perform even better in future engagements. The local populace, having witnessed the aerial combat, was ecstatic. For the first time, they saw Japanese aircraft defeated. In Kunming, jubilant citizens collected fragments of downed enemy planes as trophies, while others expressed their joy through traditional celebrations. The presence of the American volunteer group AVG brought a renewed sense of hope and morale to the region. The AVG's success extended beyond Kunming. In late 1941, the Japanese intensified their bombing campaigns over Rangoon, now Yangon, Burma. Amidst the devastation, the Shwedagon Pagoda, a significant Buddhist landmark, remarkably remained unscathed, possibly due to cultural respect from Japanese pilots. However, the rest of the city suffered extensive damage. On December 23, 1941, a formidable Japanese force comprising 48 bombers and 20 fighter escorts targeted Rangoon. The AVG's 3rd Squadron, alongside the Royal Air Force, RAF, rose to defend the city. During this engagement, the AVG pilots showcased their prowess, with several Japanese aircraft being shot down. Notably, pilot Robert R.T. Smith recounted the intense aerial combat and the elation of achieving his first aerial victory. Despite the overwhelming odds, the AVG's tactics and determination led to a significant defensive success. Tragically, these victories came at a cost. The AVG mourned the loss of pilots like Henry Gilbert, who was among the first to sacrifice his life in the defense of Rangoon. Chennault personally conveyed condolences to Gilbert's widow, emphasizing the profound sense of loss felt within the group. Such events underscored the perilous nature of their mission and the personal sacrifices involved. The Japanese, aiming to cripple Rangoon's defenses, launched a massive assault on December 25, 1941. A combined force of AVG pilots and RAF fighters confronted the attackers. Despite being outnumbered, the defenders managed to inflict substantial losses on the Japanese, downing numerous aircraft while sustaining minimal casualties themselves. This engagement marked a turning point, showcasing the effectiveness of the AVG's tactics and boosting Allied morale. However, the relentless combat operations strained the AVG's resources. With limited access to spare parts and replacement aircraft, maintaining operational readiness became increasingly challenging. The scarcity of essential components like propellers and tires meant that at times, only about 20 aircraft were mission-ready. Additionally, the loss of experienced pilots such as Robert Sandel and Louis Lou Hoffman further impacted the group's combat effectiveness. Hoffman, the oldest AVG pilot at 44, demonstrated remarkable bravery before his untimely death during a fierce engagement over Rangoon. Despite these hardships, the AVG's resilience and tenacity became legendary. Their successes provided a much-needed boost to Allied forces during the early, uncertain days of the Pacific War. The moniker Flying Tigers, bestowed upon them by the Chinese press, symbolized their fierce spirit and formidable presence in the skies. Parades and public celebrations in their honor reflected the deep gratitude and admiration of the Chinese people. The legacy of the Flying Tigers endures, embodying a unique chapter in the annals of aerial warfare and international camaraderie. Sources: the American Volunteer Group, AVG, famously known as the Flying Tigers, became a symbol of hope and resilience during the early years of World War II. Their distinctive shark-faced Curtiss P-40 Warhawks and remarkable combat success made them legendary. In February 1942, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and Madame Chiang Kai-shek personally visited Kunming to honor the AVG. They hosted a banquet at the No. 1 AVG hostel, where Chiang praised the group's bravery, noting their impressive record against Japanese forces. Madame Chiang expressed her admiration by referring to them as her angels. She further solidified her support by becoming the unit's honorary commander and serving as a liaison between the AVG and her husband. On behalf of the Chinese Cultural Society, she presented the group with a painting of an eagle, symbolizing their soaring spirit and valor. During this challenging period, China was largely isolated, with Japanese forces controlling its ports. The Burma Road emerged as a vital supply route, connecting the outside world to China's interior. Constructed between 1937 and 1938, this 717-mile road traversed rugged mountain terrain. Remarkably, it was built by 200,000 Burmese and Chinese laborers using minimal equipment, highlighting their determination and resilience. The AVG played a crucial role in securing both ends of the Burma Road, ensuring the continuous flow of essential supplies into China. Despite facing overwhelming odds, with the Japanese fielding approximately 4,500 aircraft compared to the AVG and Royal Air Force's combined 30 fighters and a few bombers, the AVG employed guerrilla tactics to disrupt enemy operations effectively. In late March 1942, under the leadership of squadron leader Jack Newkirk, the AVG executed a daring raid on Chiang Mai, Thailand, destroying around 20 Japanese aircraft. Tragically, Newkirk, a double ace credited with 10.5 enemy aircraft, was killed during this mission. His death was widely reported, underscoring the significant sacrifices made by the AVG. The Japanese, frustrated by the AVG's effective guerrilla tactics, issued radio threats, vowing no mercy if such strategies continued. However, these threats only steeled the resolve of the Flying Tigers. Their combat experiences matured them rapidly, transforming them from eager young pilots into seasoned warriors. Despite their aerial successes, the ground war in Burma took a dire turn. Japanese ground forces overwhelmed Allied troops, leading to the fall of Burma. The AVG retreated to China, where they faced one of their most significant challenges, the Battle of the Salween Gorge. In May 1942, the Japanese attempted to cross the Salween River, a natural barrier between China and Burma. With limited resources, including improvised gasoline bombs, the AVG launched relentless attacks over 4 days, successfully halting the Japanese advance and safeguarding China's southwestern flank. By mid-1942, the war had become a grueling test of endurance. The Flying Tigers regrouped in Chongqing, China's wartime capital, to continue their defense efforts. Despite limited resources, their innovative tactics and unwavering spirit left an indelible mark on the course of the war in the China-Burma-India theater. The American Volunteer Group, AVG, famously known as the Flying Tigers, was a unit of American pilots who served under the Republic of China Air Force during the early stages of World War II. Their distinctive aircraft, adorned with shark-mouth nose art, and their remarkable combat success made them legendary figures in both Chinese and American military history. Formation and early days. In 1941, as China faced relentless aggression from Imperial Japan, Claire Lee Chennault, a retired U.S. Army Air Corps officer, was instrumental in forming the AVG. Recruited under the authority of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the group consisted of pilots from the U.S. Army Air Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps. They were contracted to serve in the Chinese Air Force with the mission to defend China against Japanese forces. The AVG was officially formed on April 1, 1941, and began training in Burma. Combat operations. The AVG first saw combat on December 20, 1941, shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Employing innovative tactics that capitalized on the strengths of their Curtiss P-40 Warhawks, they achieved significant success against Japanese aircraft. Chennault's strategy emphasized diving attacks and avoiding traditional dogfights, leveraging the P-40's superior diving speed and firepower. This approach proved effective against the more maneuverable but lightly armored Japanese fighters. Challenges and adaptations. Despite their successes, the AVG faced numerous challenges, including limited resources and the need for effective early warning systems. To mitigate these issues, Chennault established an extensive network of spotters, often referred to as bamboo radar, which provided early alerts of incoming Japanese air raids. This system allowed the Flying Tigers to gain altitude and position themselves advantageously before engaging enemy aircraft. in.wikipedia.org. Transition and legacy. The AVG was officially disbanded on July 4, 1942, as their one-year contracts expired. Many of the pilots were offered commissions in the United States Army Air Forces, USAAF, leading to the formation of the 23rd Fighter Group, which continued the legacy of the Flying Tigers under Chennault's command. The 23rd Fighter Group later became part of the 14th Air Force. The Flying Tigers' legacy endures as a symbol of courage and ingenuity. Their contributions significantly bolstered Chinese morale and demonstrated the effectiveness of tactical innovation in aerial combat. Their story remains a testament to the impact of international cooperation in times of global conflict. The glistening peaks of the eastern Himalayas, often referred to as Aluminum Alley, are not just adorned with snow and ice, but also with the remnants of numerous aircraft that met their fate in these treacherous mountains during World War II. Pilots navigating the perilous Hump Route, a critical air corridor over the Himalayas, would sometimes jest that they needed no compass. The trail of downed plains below served as their guide. The moniker "The Hump" aptly described the arduous journey over the towering Himalayan ranges. This route became indispensable after Japanese forces seized control of Burma in 1942, effectively cutting off the Burma Road, the last land supply line into China. In response, Allied forces established an aerial supply line to transport essential materials from Assam, India to Kunming, China, ensuring that Chinese forces under Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek could continue their resistance against Japanese aggression. The challenges of flying the Hump were immense. Pilots faced unpredictable and severe weather conditions, including violent turbulence, winds reaching speeds of 125 to 200 miles per hour, and frequent icing. Navigational aids were scarce, and the lack of reliable maps made the journey even more hazardous. The aircraft, often overloaded and underpowered, had to ascend rapidly to altitudes of up to 20,000 feet to clear the mountainous terrain, pushing both machines and their crews to the limits. The human cost of maintaining this aerial lifeline was staggering. Over the course of the operation, 594 aircraft were lost, and 1,659 personnel perished or went missing. The perilous nature of the route led to the grim nickname Aluminum Alley, as the scattered wreckage of crashed planes littered the mountainsides, serving as somber markers of the dangers faced. Despite these formidable obstacles, the airlift operations were a testament to Allied perseverance. From April 1942 until the end of the war, pilots flew continuous missions, delivering approximately 650,000 tons of vital supplies to Chinese forces. This effort played a crucial role in sustaining China's resistance against Japan and contributed significantly to the broader Allied war strategy in the Asia-Pacific theater. The legacy of those who flew the hump is one of bravery and resilience. Their endeavors not only kept supply lines open under dire circumstances, but also forged a lasting bond between the Allied nations involved. Today, the remnants of Aluminum Alley stand as enduring symbols of the sacrifices made and the critical importance of the hump operations in the context of World War II. Sources: the perilous airlift operation over the eastern Himalayas during World War II, known as the hump, was a critical supply route for the Allied forces, particularly in supporting China against Japanese aggression. Pilots navigating this treacherous path often remarked that they scarcely needed compasses, as the numerous wrecks below, remnants of previous flights, served as grim markers guiding their way. The moniker "the hump" originated from the pilot's perspective of the Himalayan peaks resembling the humps of a camel, presenting formidable obstacles that had to be surmounted. Following the Japanese capture of Burma in 1942, traditional land routes like the Burma Road were severed, isolating China from essential Allied supplies. In response, the Allies established an aerial supply line from Assam, India, to Kunming, China, traversing the daunting Himalayan terrain. The logistical challenges were immense. Supplies embarked on a lengthy journey, beginning with sea voyages from the west coast of the United States across the Pacific to ports in India, such as Kolkata. To evade Japanese naval forces, some convoys detoured around the Indian subcontinent, docking at western ports like Bombay or Karachi, extending the voyage to over 12,000 miles. Upon arrival, cargoes were transported via India's intricate railway network to Assam, covering an additional 1,200 miles eastward. This arduous process often spanned 4 to 5 months before supplies were loaded onto aircraft for the final and most hazardous leg over the hump. Pilots faced numerous perils, including unpredictable weather patterns, severe turbulence, and the constant threat of Japanese fighter interceptions. The lack of reliable navigation aids and accurate weather forecasts compounded the risks. Icing was a persistent danger. As ice accumulated on propellers, chunks would dislodge, striking the fuselage with alarming force, leading pilots to fear structural failures. These conditions made flying the hump one of the most formidable assignments in aviation history. The human cost was staggering. By the war's end, over 600 aircraft were lost, and more than 1,000 crew members perished. The route earned the grim nickname, the Aluminum Trail, referencing the scattered wreckage that littered the mountainsides. Survival rates were disheartening. For every 1,000 tons of cargo delivered, approximately 3 pilots lost their lives. This led to the somber adage among airmen: a drop of gasoline, a drop of blood. Despite these challenges, the airlift's contributions were monumental. From April 1942 to November 1945, approximately 650,000 tons of vital materials were transported to China via this aerial route. This sustained the Chinese war effort and facilitated the establishment of air bases from which Allied forces could launch operations against Japanese positions. The relentless efforts of these pilots played a pivotal role in maintaining China's resistance and contributed significantly to the broader Allied victory in the Pacific theater. Among the notable figures of this era was Brigadier General Robert Lee Scott Jr., a distinguished pilot and author. Scott's memoir, God Is My Co-Pilot, published in 1943, chronicles his experiences flying with the Flying Tigers and the U.S. Army Air Forces in China and Burma. His narrative provides a vivid account of the challenges faced by pilots during these perilous missions and was later adapted into a 1945 film of the same name. The legacy of the hump airlift stands as a testament to the courage and resilience of the pilots and crews who braved the world's highest mountains to deliver essential supplies. Their sacrifices and determination were instrumental in sustaining Allied operations in the China-Burma-India theater and exemplify the extraordinary efforts undertaken during World War II to overcome logistical challenges and support Allied nations in their fight against tyranny. The China Air Task Force, CATF, established in July 1942 under Brigadier General Claire Chennault, faced immense challenges during World War II. With limited resources, including 51 fighters comprising Curtiss 81A1s, P-40B Tomahawks, and P-40E Warhawks, of which only 29 were operational, the CATF was tasked with defending the aerial supply route over the Himalayas, known as the Hump, and providing air support to Chinese ground forces. The CATF's mission was critical, as the Japanese occupation of Burma in 1942 had severed the Burma Road, the last land route for Allied supplies to China. This necessitated the establishment of an airlift over the eastern end of the Himalayan mountains, a route fraught with peril due to treacherous weather, high altitudes, and the threat of Japanese fighter interception. Pilots navigating this passage often referred to it as the Hump due to its challenging terrain. Despite these obstacles, the KATF conducted numerous combat missions. Between July 1942 and March 1943, they were credited with shooting down 149 Japanese aircraft with an additional 85 probable kills while losing only 16 P-40s. They also executed 65 bombing missions against Japanese targets in China, Burma, and Indochina, dropping 311 tons of bombs and losing just one B-25 bomber. The airlift operations over the Hump were among the most dangerous of the war. Pilots faced extreme weather conditions, unreliable navigation aids, and the constant threat of enemy action. The route claimed 594 aircraft and 1,659 personnel over its 42-month duration. Despite these losses, the airlift delivered approximately 650,000 tons of material to support Chinese forces, underscoring the operation's significance. The KOTF's efforts were instrumental in sustaining Chinese resistance against Japanese forces. Their resilience and bravery under such challenging conditions contributed significantly to the Allied war effort in the China-Burma-India theater. In March 1943, the CATF was disbanded and replaced by the 14th Air Force, with Chennault promoted to Major General and continuing his command, building upon the foundation laid by the CATF. The perilous air route over the Himalayas, known as the Hump, was a critical lifeline during World War II, connecting Allied forces in India to those in China. Pilots navigating this treacherous path often remarked that they scarcely needed a compass, as the numerous wreckages below served as grim markers guiding their way. The moniker the Hump aptly described the formidable challenges pilots faced. The route's topography resembled the undulating back of a camel, with pilots first ascending the lower hump before confronting the towering peaks of the Himalayas. This journey was fraught with danger, as aircraft had to navigate steep ascents and descents, often in unpredictable weather conditions. Initiated in early 1942, the Hump route became the sole conduit for supplies into China after the Japanese seized control of Burma, effectively cutting off the Burma Road. This aerial supply line was indispensable, ensuring that Chinese forces remained equipped to resist Japanese advances. The logistics of the operation were staggering. Supplies embarked on a lengthy voyage from the west coast of the United States, traversing the Pacific Ocean to reach ports like Kolkata, India. To evade Japanese naval patrols, some convoys detoured around the Indian subcontinent, docking at ports such as Bombay or Karachi. From there, cargo was transported via India's intricate railway system to Assam in the northeast, covering approximately 1,200 miles. This overland journey often spanned 4 to 5 months before the supplies were loaded onto aircraft for the final and most perilous leg over the Himalayas. Pilots faced myriad challenges on these flights. The Himalayas presented unpredictable weather patterns with sudden storms, severe turbulence, and the ever-present threat of icing. Navigational aids were rudimentary, and the high altitudes tested both aircraft performance and human endurance. The constant risk of mechanical failure or enemy interception loomed large, making each flight a testament to the crew's bravery and resilience. The human cost of maintaining this supply line was profound. For every 1,000 tons of cargo delivered, it was estimated that 3 pilots lost their lives. The adage, "a drop of gasoline, a drop of blood," poignantly captured the sacrifices made. Pilots and crew members operated under relentless pressure, with minimal rest between missions, often pushing the limits of human endurance. The loss of aircraft was staggering. Over the course of the operation, more than 1,500 planes were lost to various causes, including adverse weather, mechanical failures, and enemy action. This equated to an average of nearly 1 plane per day, underscoring the operation's inherent dangers. Despite these challenges, the Hump airlift was a logistical triumph. Over its duration, more than 800,000 tons of supplies were transported into China, accounting for over 80% of the military supplies used on the Chinese front. This sustained the Chinese war effort, tying down significant Japanese forces and contributing to the broader Allied strategy in the Pacific theater. on.wikipedia.org. General Claire Chennault, commander of the China Air Task Force, played a pivotal role in this endeavor. Recognizing the strategic importance of air power, Chennault advocated for increased resources and support for the airlift operations. His leadership ensured that, even in the face of overwhelming odds, the supply line remained operational, providing critical support to Allied forces in China. The legacy of the Hump airlift is one of courage, sacrifice, and determination. The pilots and crew who braved the aluminum alley of the Himalayas not only delivered essential supplies, but also embodied the indomitable spirit of the Allied forces during World War II. In the early 1940s, the relentless conflict of World War II demanded innovative strategies and unwavering courage from those on the front lines. One of the most perilous operations was the aerial supply route over the Himalayas, known as the Hump. This treacherous pathway became a lifeline for China, isolated from Allied support after Japanese forces cut off traditional supply routes. The perilous journey over the Hump. From early 1942, with the fall of Burma severing the last overland supply lines, the Allies were compelled to establish an air bridge over the Himalayas to deliver essential supplies to Chinese forces. Pilots faced extreme weather conditions, unpredictable turbulence, and the constant threat of enemy interception. The route was so hazardous that it earned the grim moniker the Aluminum Trail, as the mountains were littered with wreckage from crashed aircraft. Pilots often remarked that they could navigate by the glint of sunlight reflecting off the scattered debris below. The challenges were immense, flying over towering peaks without modern navigation aids, dealing with severe icing, and enduring the physical toll of high-altitude flight in unpressurized cabins. Despite these dangers, the mission's importance was paramount, as it ensured that Chinese forces remained supplied and continued their resistance against Japanese occupation. The genesis of the 14th Air Force. Amid these logistical challenges, air combat operations in the China-Burma-India (CBI) theater underwent significant transformations. The American Volunteer Group, AVG, famously known as the Flying Tigers, had been instrumental in defending China against Japanese air assaults. Led by Claire Lee Chennault, the AVG achieved remarkable success with their distinctive shark-faced P-40 fighters. However, as the United States formally entered the war, there was a need to integrate these efforts into the broader Allied command structure. On March 10, 1943, President Franklin D. Roosevelt officially established the 14th Air Force, appointing Chennault as its commander and promoting him to Major General. This new formation absorbed units like the China Air Task Force and continued the legacy of the Flying Tigers, conducting fighter and bomber operations across a vast front that stretched from the Yellow River in the north to Indochina in the south, and from Chengdu in the west to the east and South China Seas. Madame Chiang Kai-shek's influential U.S. visit, the establishment and expansion of the 14th Air Force were significantly bolstered by diplomatic efforts, notably by Madame Chiang Kai-shek, the First Lady of the Republic of China. In February 1943, she embarked on a goodwill tour of the United States, aiming to garner support for China's war efforts. Fluent in English and possessing a deep understanding of Western culture, Madame Chiang captivated American audiences and policymakers alike. Her address to the U.S. Congress on February 18, 1943, was a historic moment. She eloquently appealed for increased support, emphasizing the shared struggle against tyranny and the importance of China's role in the Allied victory. Her speech resonated deeply, leading to a surge in American public support and influencing the Roosevelt administration's decision to enhance military aid to China. This included the provision of additional aircraft and resources essential for the operations of the 14th Air Force. The impact of the 14th Air Force. Under Chennault's leadership, the 14th Air Force implemented aggressive tactics that disrupted Japanese supply lines and provided critical air support to Chinese ground forces. Despite being smaller in size compared to other U.S. Air Forces, the 14th achieved significant results. They established air superiority over China, destroying over 2,300 Japanese aircraft by the end of the war. Their efforts also led to the destruction of numerous bridges, locomotives, and supply convoys, crippling Japanese operations in the region. on.wikipedia.org. The legacy of cooperation. The collaboration between American and Chinese forces extended beyond combat operations. The formation of the Chinese-American Composite Wing, CACW, in 1943 exemplified this partnership. This unit combined American pilots and aircraft with Chinese air crews and support personnel, fostering a unique environment of mutual respect and shared purpose. The CACW conducted numerous successful missions, further weakening Japanese positions and boosting the morale of both nations. Conclusion. The intertwined narratives of the perilous Hump operations, the strategic establishment of the 14th Air Force, and the diplomatic endeavors of figures like Madame Chiang Kai-shek highlight the multifaceted efforts that contributed to the Allied victory in the CBI theater. These stories of bravery, innovation, and collaboration serve as enduring reminders of the sacrifices made, and the enduring spirit of cooperation between nations in the face of adversity. In the early 1940s, the China-Burma-India (CBI) theater of World War II was marked by strategic disagreements among Allied leaders, particularly between General Joseph Stilwell and General Claire Lee Chennault. Stilwell, appointed as Chief of Staff to Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and commander of U.S. forces in the CBI, advocated for strengthening Chinese ground forces to reclaim territories occupied by Japan. He believed that training and equipping Chinese infantry were essential for a successful counteroffensive. In contrast, Chennault, who led the famed Flying Tigers and later the U.S. 14th Air Force, proposed leveraging air power to target Japanese supply lines and bases. He argued that a robust aerial campaign could weaken Japanese forces without the need for extensive ground operations. This fundamental difference in military strategy led to ongoing friction between the two generals. on.wikipedia.org. In 1943, both Stilwell and Chennault were summoned to Washington to present their strategies to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. During separate meetings, Roosevelt inquired about their opinions on Chiang Kai-shek. Stilwell reportedly described Chiang as an ignorant peasant bastard who never keeps his word, reflecting his deep frustrations with the Chinese leader's tactics and commitment. Chennault, however, praised Chiang as one of the greatest leaders in the 20th century whom we should back without hesitation, highlighting his supportive relationship with Chiang and belief in his leadership. These contrasting perspectives influenced Roosevelt's decisions regarding U.S. support in the region. Aligning with Chennault's views and Chiang's preferences, Roosevelt approved increased aid to China, including the provision of aircraft to bolster Chennault's air strategy. This decision underscored the complex interplay of military strategy and political considerations in the Allied efforts against Japan. Amid these strategic deliberations, Madame Chiang Kai-shek, Sung Mei-ling, the First Lady of the Republic of China, played a pivotal role in strengthening U.S.-China relations. Educated in the United States and fluent in English, Madame Chiang embarked on a speaking tour across the U.S. in 1943 to garner support for China's war efforts. Her eloquence and charm captivated American audiences, drawing large crowds and significant media attention. On February 18, 1943, she addressed a joint session of the U.S. Congress, a rare honor for a foreign dignitary. In her speech, she emphasized the shared democratic ideals of China and the United States and appealed for continued support against Japanese aggression. Her address was met with enthusiastic applause and bolstered American public support for China. Madame Chiang's efforts contributed to a shift in American perceptions of China, portraying it as a modernizing nation aligned with democratic values. Her influence extended beyond public opinion. Her advocacy played a role in policy decisions, including the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act and increased military aid to China. Her unique position as a cultural bridge between East and West exemplified the soft power dynamics at play during the war. These intertwined narratives of military strategy debates and diplomatic endeavors highlight the multifaceted nature of the Allied collaboration in the CBI theater. The personal dynamics among leaders and the strategic choices made during this period had lasting impacts on the course of the war in Asia and the post-war geopolitical landscape. In late 1943, the Allied air forces in China underwent significant reorganization, leading to the formation of the Chinese-American Composite Wing, CACW. This unique unit integrated Chinese and American pilots, fostering joint operations against Japanese forces. The CACW officially commenced operations on October 1, 1943, with Colonel Winslow C. Morse from the United States serving as the wing commander and Lieutenant Colonel Chang Y.F. as the Chinese vice commander. The majority of the CACW's personnel were Chinese pilots who had undergone training in the United States, while approximately a quarter were American. This collaborative structure allowed for coordinated missions, enhancing the effectiveness of their operations. The CACW's formation marked a significant step in Sino-American military cooperation during World War II. One of the CACW's notable missions was the attack on the Shinchiku Air Base in Taiwan. On November 25, 1943, coinciding with the American Thanksgiving Day, 30 aircraft from the CACW launched a surprise assault on the Japanese-held airbase. The operation resulted in the destruction of over 70 Japanese planes on the ground and 12 in aerial combat, with all American aircraft returning safely. This mission underscored the strategic impact of the CACW's joint operations. Despite initial Japanese air superiority in the early years of the war, the balance shifted as Allied forces grew stronger. In response, the Japanese military initiated Operation Ichigo in 1944, aiming to eliminate Allied air bases in China and secure a land route to French Indochina. This massive offensive involved over 500,000 Japanese troops and targeted key provinces such as Henan, Hunan, and Guangxi. During this period, the CACW faced significant challenges. The Japanese advance led to the capture of several Allied air bases, forcing the CACW and other units to relocate and adapt their strategies. Despite these setbacks, the CACW continued to conduct operations, contributing to the broader Allied efforts in the China-Burma-India theater. The collaboration between Chinese and American forces within the CACW exemplified the spirit of international cooperation. Pilots like Glenn Benita experienced firsthand the support of Chinese civilians and military units. After being shot down during a mission, Benita was rescued and sheltered by Chinese forces for 60 days before safely returning to his base. Such instances highlighted the mutual trust and camaraderie that developed between the Allies and the Chinese populace. In summary, the establishment and operations of the Chinese-American Composite Wing represented a pivotal chapter in World War II's China theater. Through joint efforts, strategic missions, and enduring partnerships, the CACW played a crucial role in the fight against Japanese forces, leaving a legacy of cooperation and resilience. In the eyes of many Chinese, the Flying Tigers are celebrated as heroes. However, for individuals like Bonita, it was the Chinese people who embodied true heroism. As he often remarked, "It was the Chinese people who gave me life." Not all pilots were as fortunate as Bonita. On August 31, 1944, a B-24 bomber pilot embarked on a mission to target Japanese battleships anchored in a Taiwanese port. Upon returning, he discovered his base under attack, forcing him to divert to an alternative airfield, a destination he tragically never reached. In 1996, villagers Punchy Bine and Zhongjun were foraging for herbs near the peak of Mauer Mountain when they stumbled upon debris from a crashed plane, unseen for half a century. The county museum conducted multiple investigations at the crash site, uncovering machine guns, pistols, an oxygen tank, electronic instruments, and identification tags of 5 airmen, confirming it as the long-lost bomber. Investigators speculated that amidst unfamiliar terrain, darkness, and dense fog, the bomber lost its bearings and collided with the mountain's main peak. Subsequent expeditions by the Shingan County Museum aimed to locate the aviator's remains, but the perilous terrain rendered each journey life-threatening. In 1997, a solemn ceremony in Shingan County marked the handover of the aircrew's remains between China and the United States. After over 50 years in the mountain wilderness, these American soldiers, who had journeyed thousands of miles to aid China against Japanese forces, were finally reunited with their families. The eldest among them was 29, the youngest just 19. Despite Japanese successes on the ground, capturing vital airfields, they miscalculated the impact on aerial dominance. The 14th Air Force maintained relentless pressure, undeterred by the loss of bases. Tens of thousands of Chinese civilians tirelessly transformed their farmlands into new airstrips, often perilously close to enemy lines. Even when the Japanese destroyed these makeshift airfields, the resilient locals would promptly rebuild them, enabling U.S. aircraft to resume operations within days. It was often said that American planes took off from and landed on the hands of the Chinese people. General Chennault, in his autobiography, expressed profound gratitude, noting that the Chinese people's most significant contribution to the 14th Air Force was their unwavering dedication to airfield construction. Regardless of how many airfields the Japanese occupied, the 14th Air Force continued its missions as the Chinese could swiftly establish new airstrips anywhere. This adaptability rendered the 14th Air Force akin to the mythical Hydra. For every airfield the Japanese destroyed, 2 more seemed to emerge. Unsatisfied with sporadic bombings, Chennault, alongside General Curtis LeMay of the 20th Air Force, orchestrated an unprecedented aerial assault. The 20th Air Force had been established to launch bombing raids on Japan from Chinese bases, and by April 1944, over 100 B-29 Superfortress bombers, the era's most advanced aircraft, were stationed in China. These bombers boasted exceptional range, payload capacity, and defensive capabilities, allowing them to operate without escorts. On December 18, 1944, 17 B-29s departed from Changgu, targeting the Hankou Airfield, Japan's largest base in central China. The Japanese defenders were caught off guard, and the bombers inflicted significant damage on airfields, docks, and warehouses. As the last B-29 departed, Hankou was engulfed in dense smoke. An hour later, 200 aircraft from the 14th Air Force launched a second wave, engaging in dogfights with the disoriented Japanese pilots, still reeling from the initial strike. This coordinated assault decimated oil reserves and paralyzed railways, with fires raging for 8 days. The U.S. forces achieved air superiority, downing or damaging 64 Japanese planes without incurring any losses. The following day, Chennault addressed the press, declaring that the successful raid demonstrated Japan's complete loss of air control over China, asserting that the American and Chinese air forces now dominated the skies. By 1944, Chennault had spent 7 years in China and was 54 years old. Under his leadership, a once motley group of mercenaries had evolved into a formidable air force, achieving remarkable combat successes. Amidst his strategic planning against Japan, an unexpected personal development occurred. A 19-year-old Chinese journalist entered his life. Reflecting on their first meeting during a press conference, she recalled being the only woman present and feeling nervous. Chennault's demeanor put everyone at ease, and upon noticing her, he mentioned knowing her father, the Chinese consul general in California. She was struck by Chennault's determination, noting that any woman would admire a strong man with decisiveness and resolve. In the final stages of World War II, the collaboration between the Chinese Expeditionary Force and the American 14th Air Force led to significant victories against Japanese forces in southwest China. After enduring over 2 years of occupation, these joint operations successfully reclaimed key territories, culminating in the securing of China's southwest gateway. This hard-fought campaign resulted in substantial casualties for the Chinese army, with over 60,000 soldiers lost. n.wikipedia.org. The conflict also claimed the lives of 14 American pilots and members of the Army Advisory Group. On January 27, 1945, a pivotal moment occurred when the Chinese Expeditionary Force and the Chinese Army in India reunited, reopening vital supply routes into China. This reconnection allowed for the flow of military supplies both by air, over the treacherous hump of the Himalayas, and by road, bolstering the Chinese war effort. By early 1945, coordinated counterattacks by the Chinese Army, supported by the American Air Force, forced Japanese troops into retreat. By June, Japanese aircraft presence in China's skies had diminished significantly. Dogfights became so rare that both American and Chinese pilots found themselves yearning for combat sorties. In June 1945, news of Germany's surrender in Europe reached China, signaling the approaching end of the global conflict. However, internal military politics led to significant changes in command. General George Marshall, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and General Henry Hap Arnold, commander of the U.S. Army Air Forces, both previously staunch supporters of General Claire Lee Chennault, decided to relieve him of his command in China. Chennault was compelled to resign in the summer of 1945, just weeks before the conclusion of the war. For a seasoned veteran like Chennault, leaving the battlefield on the cusp of victory was a profound disappointment. On July 16, 1945, the Central Daily News published an editorial titled, "Farewell to General Chennault," a rare honor from a nationalist government newspaper to a departing foreign military leader. On July 30th, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek personally awarded Chennault China's highest military decoration, the Order of Blue Sky and White Sun, during a ceremony at his official residence in Chongqing. August 8, 1945, marked a series of pivotal events: the aftermath of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the Soviet Union's declaration of war on Japan, and General Chennault's departure from Kunming, China, en route to the United States. He departed from the Kunming airfield, a site of early Flying Tiger's triumphs, which had been recently renamed Chennault Airfield in his honor. 2 days later, following the Nagasaki bombing, the 14th Air Force ceased all combat missions. The directive to halt operations came from General George Stratemeyer, the newly appointed Supreme Commander of the U.S. Air Forces in China, rather than from Chennault, who had dedicated himself to China's defense since 1937. Chennault received news of Japan's unconditional surrender while en route to the United States via Europe. Notably, he was not invited to the official surrender ceremony aboard the USS Missouri, a decision that deeply affected him. The conclusion of the war also signaled the end of the illustrious service of the Chinese-American Composite Wing, CACW. Before disbanding, the CACW participated in one final mission. On August 21, 1945, General Teiichi Suzuki, representing Japanese forces in China, flew to Zhejiang to formalize Japan's surrender. The ceremony took place at the barracks of the 5th Fighter Group of the CACW. After meticulously reviewing the surrender documents prepared by the Chinese, General Suzuki signed and sealed the memorandum. General Ho Ying-chin, representing both China and the United States, posed for a group photograph with the attendees, marking the end of 8 years of intense conflict. Chennault's commitment to China did not wane after the war. 6 months later, he returned to establish a civilian aviation company. However, the shifting political landscape presented challenges. Initially, his company transported military supplies to Chiang Kai-shek's forces during the Chinese Civil War. Subsequently, legal disputes arose with the newly established People's Republic of China over the status of 71 airplanes detained in Hong Kong. These controversies overshadowed the esteemed reputation he had earned as the leader of the Flying Tigers. In his later years, Chennault faced severe health issues that required hospitalization. Madame Chiang Kai-shek, affectionately referring to him as General, visited him during this time, maintaining the bond they had shared since 1937. Chennault passed away on July 27, 1958. 9 days before his death, President Dwight D. Eisenhower promoted him to the honorary rank of Lieutenant General. His funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. Notably, his tombstone bears inscriptions in both English and Chinese, making it the only one of its kind in Arlington. In 1960, a bronze statue of Chennault was unveiled in Taipei, Taiwan. The ceremony was attended by Madame Chiang Kai-shek and Chennault's widow, Anna Chan Chennault. However, Chennault's relationship with mainland China remained strained long after his passing. It wasn't until 1981 that his widow, Anna, was able to visit the mainland, symbolizing a posthumous reconciliation. In 1944, the Chinese Expeditionary Force, with substantial support from General Claire Lee Chennault's 14th Air Force, launched a series of counteroffensives against Japanese strongholds in southwest China. These coordinated efforts led to the recapture of key territories, effectively securing China's southwest gateway after 2 years of occupation. The campaign was costly. The Chinese army suffered over 60,000 casualties, and 14 American pilots and members of the Army Advisory Group also lost their lives. By early 1945, the collaboration between Chinese ground forces and the American Air Force had significantly weakened Japanese positions. Military supplies flowed more freely into China, both by air over the hump and by road. By June, Japanese aircraft presence in China's skies had dwindled, leading to rare aerial engagements. This dominance marked a turning point in the China-Burma-India theater, with Allied forces gaining the upper hand. Despite these successes, internal politics led to Chennault's forced resignation in the summer of 1945. His departure was a poignant moment, as he had been instrumental in China's aerial defense since 1937. On July 30, 1945, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek awarded Chennault China's highest military honor, the Order of Blue Sky and White Sun, in recognition of his contributions. After World War II, Chennault briefly returned to the United States, but soon went back to China, establishing a civil aviation company. However, the shifting political landscape led to challenges, including legal disputes with the newly established People's Republic of China over detained aircraft in Hong Kong. These events overshadowed his earlier reputation as the leader of the Flying Tigers. Chennault's health declined in his later years, and he was hospitalized. Madame Chiang Kai-shek, affectionately referring to him as General, visited him during this period, reflecting the enduring respect between them. Chennault passed away on July 27, 1958, and was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery. Notably, his tombstone is inscribed with Chinese characters, symbolizing his deep connection to China. In January 1981, Anna Chennault, serving as an unofficial envoy for President-elect Ronald Reagan, visited Beijing and met with Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. During their discussions in the Great Hall of the People, Deng spoke highly of General Chennault and the Flying Tigers, marking the first positive acknowledgement by a Chinese official since 1949 of Chennault's contributions to the anti-Japanese war. Throughout the conflict, over 2,000 American airmen lost their lives in China. Some perished in aerial combat, others in crashes over Chinese soil or waters. Collectively, they were known as the Flying Tigers, embodying unparalleled strength and courage.